Hello friends, welcome back to Malicious Compliance Stories. But before we begin, best way to support our channel is to leave comments, like, and subscribe with the turned on bell so you don't miss the new video every single day. Here we go. He didn't believe my translations, so I did it his way. Going to preface this by saying I really do love my parents, they're good people, but they absolutely have a way of getting under my skin. Last year, my family took a trip to Europe. We visited a few countries, including Germany, which was a bit of a homecoming for me. I, 23-year-old female, speak both French and German fluently, and I'd actually lived in Germany for a while. My mom speaks French very well, my brother can kind of follow along, and my dad speaks English, and that's it. Not a word of French, not a word of German. I also had another advantage. My German prepaid SIM card still worked. I was the only one with a German phone number, which made calling or looking up local info a lot easier. Between that, my language skills and my familiarity with the country, I figured I'd be the family navigator in Germany without much drama. I was wrong. In the French-speaking areas of the trip, things went fine. My mother, my brother, and I could all speak or understand enough to navigate together, so my dad mostly went along with whatever we decided. But the moment we crossed into Germany, specifically Konstanz, which is an absolutely gorgeous lakeside area, everything changed. Because I was the only one who spoke German, suddenly I was the sole translator. That apparently didn't sit well with my dad. Taking instructions from his daughter, especially in a place he didn't know, seemed to trigger his inner "I'll figure it out myself" mode. His first move was to start buying maps, paper maps, in 2020-something. He'd spread them out, squint at them, and try to navigate based on landmarks, as though the 21st century marvel of GPS didn't exist. He also didn't trust Google Maps. He's never really liked it, so if I used it to plan our route, he'd grumble under his breath about how it was probably wrong. Now, one important thing about Konstanz, it's right on Lake Constance, and a lot of local travel involves ferries. Cars can only take you so far before you have to hop on a boat to get across. We were planning to visit another part of the lake, so naturally I went up to the information desk to ask which ferry we needed, when it was leaving, and how to get tickets. That's when my dad decided to intervene. "You don't need to ask about a boat," he said. "We can just drive there." My mom quickly vetoed that idea. She didn't want him driving in an unfamiliar country, especially with tricky signage and traffic laws. He was already a little grumpy about that, but he decided he'd still be the one in charge of figuring out how'd we get there. As I spoke to the information desk clerk in German, I paraphrased and condensed for my family in English. That's pretty normal for translating. If I gave them every single detail word for word, we'd be standing there forever. But my dad didn't like that. He said, "No, you need to translate exactly what they're saying so I can decide if we're on the right boat." I tried to explain that German sentence structure is very different from English, and sometimes I had to wait until the end of the sentence to even know how it should be translated. He wasn't having it. "Just do it word for word," he repeated. Fine. Here's the thing about German. In many cases, the verb comes at the end of the sentence, and German speakers often create long, winding sentences full of clauses, so you can be halfway through before you even know what the main point is. So I started doing exactly what he asked, word-for-word translations in real time with German word order intact. The first ferry will be at 2 p.m. at Dock 3 arriving B. At 2:30 will be the next ferry arriving B. The tickets for the ferries can be over there, bought B. I kept going, letting the sentences get more and more convoluted as the clerk added details about return times, seating options, and weather delays. My dad was trying to write things down, but he couldn't keep up. Every time he thought he had the gist, another clause would twist the meaning. After a few minutes of this, he just gave up, muttered something under his breath, and stomped off to cool down. It wasn't a big scene, but I'll admit, it felt satisfying. I'd spent years studying and practicing German, and in that moment, I got to show my very math and science-oriented dad that language isn't just replacing one word with another. It's complex, it's nuanced, and sometimes, believe it or not, I know what I'm doing better than he does. The rest of the trip went smoother. He still tried to navigate a few times, but he didn't demand word-for-word translations again. And every time we took a ferry after that, I noticed he quietly let me handle the details. Most importantly, you protected the trip vibe without a blow-up, and he adjusted. That's a quiet win and a great reminder that competence speaks for itself even when the verb shows up at the end. And our second story. Karen, all the ways to get my garage. Okay, Reddit, here's the tale of how the queen of the block with a convertible decided someone else's garage was her royal carriage house. Spoiler, it ends spectacularly with a scene change to a formal dinner at a mansion and a very nervous blush on her king's face. My husband Brad and I live on a quiet cul-de-sac in the U.S. suburbs. Half the neighborhood works for the same company, a cross between a corporate family and a team-building cult with a calendar. Some neighbors even banded together to form an HOA, naturally for order, but our lot has never been inside their boundaries. I don't work, we have that agreement. Brad's a programmer who works remotely for a California firm, headphones on most of the day with the cat in his lap, and I keep our little world ticking. Some people like it, some don't. That's our choice. We only got unlucky with one neighbor, Rachel. She's the wife of one of the company's bosses. When your whole cul-de-sac is basically your open plan office and half of it are your subordinates, it's easy to decide you're the queen. She always had bug-eyed sunglasses covering half her face, leggings in a mint pina colada shade, and a Yorkie on a leash named Pepsi, who reliably chose our lawn for his content. Plus that chirpy hee-hee laugh, a squeal like someone popped Prosecco during a fire alarm. Rachel and her husband, let's call him Doug, had two cars, Doug's Mercedes and a white SUV for Rachel. Things were relatively smooth, if you don't count her habit of parking diagonally and accidentally blocking our mailbox. Then one fine day, there was some anniversary, and Doug, who loves impressing the block even more than his Rolex loves reflecting sunlight, rolled up with a Porsche convertible. Rachel shrieked like a pacemaker at a metal concert, bouncing around the car and posting stories with #bosswife, #deserved it, #treat yourself. Only problem, zero room in their garage. Peloton, Costco shelves, 3 crates of life-size Christmas reindeer. Raise the soft top? Too complicated. Park in the Mercedes' spot? Doug said no. He has morning yoga with the car. That evening, a light rain started. The kind that makes the grass happy and a convertible interior absolutely not. The Porsche's plush seats drank up the water like a sponge. Next morning, Rachel shows up at our door wearing the face of a manager who came to take 1 minute to fix your career. Neighbors, so here's the situation, she begins, swallowing words with her latte. My Porsche got soaked, an absolute tragedy for genuine leather. You only use one space in your 2-car garage, right? Give me the second one. I'll pay $200 a month. Very generous. No, Brad says without taking off his headphones. Have a nice day. Click, door. If Rachel were someone you could actually talk to, maybe we'd have helped, but her generosity sounded like an order. An hour later, a new agenda item pops up on the HOA chat. On strengthening community spirit and showing respect for premium class vehicles, the HOA president, Rachel's friend, tried to push it. In reply, she got a scan of our deed with the very clear line, HOA covenants do not apply. And just like that, the corporate whip deflated. Then it got fun. We went to the store. I had a week's list. Brad had the idea he'd just pop in for buckwheat. We come back. The garage door's up. I forgot to close it. And inside, a Porsche. Not a joke. Silver convertible sitting in our spot. Rachel next to it acting like this is perfectly normal. Move the car, I say. Doug said if you won't meet us halfway, he'll fire Brad, she replies, chewing gum like her jaws are running a competitive tender. So let's not be dramatic. $200 and it's settled. Brad sighed, counted to 10. That's how he keeps himself together when a build crashes. Got in our sedan, carefully pulled into the second space, hit the button, and the door came down. Clunk. Then he went back inside, put on his headphones, opened a beer, and launched his favorite space game. Hey, open up! Rachel was livid. Who do you think you are closing a garage with my car inside? The person who pays for this garage, Brad called from his office. Business hours are over. Support opens tomorrow at 9. She pounded on that door for a good half hour. I called the police. I didn't want her scratching the paint or breaking the lock. 2 officers arrived, one serious, the other barely holding it together. Ma'am, the serious one said, this is private property. You entered someone else's garage without permission and left your vehicle inside. Either you drive it out now, we'll open the door and you take the car, or you wait outside the property until morning. Rachel pursed her lips, let out a hee-hee that this time sounded like a malfunctioning seagull, and backed off. 4 hours later, dusk setting in, Doug showed up, beet red and smelling like cigar burps. "Where's Brad?" he opens without a hello. "I'm a vice president and he's fired." "For what?" Brad appears in a t-shirt that says, "I pause my game to be here. For disrespect for..." "I don't work at your company, Doug," Brad says, smiling the way you smile when you just found a bug where no one expected it. "But you two definitely just trespassed and nearly lost a Porsche. Have a good night." Doug opened his mouth, closed it, opened it again, and left with Rachel, slamming the gate for emphasis. We slid the deadbolt and went to bed. At 9 sharp the next morning, Brad pressed the button, the door rose, he stepped out and yawned. "Please take it," he said when Rachel hustled over. Perfectly dry, by the way. We had the garage heat on. "I won't forget this," she raised her voice. "I hope so, ma'am," Brad replied and went back to his coffee. After that, silence, the kind that feels like the calm before a storm, but no storm came. Rachel stopped even looking our way, just hustled past with Pepsi, pretending to be on a call, though her speaker only ever played her own hee-hee. Until my uncle threw a big formal dinner. He's got the kind of mansion with columns and a fountain or even flamingos would look natural. I'm close with his daughters. We spend lots of weekends together, and an invite's always nice, if a little intimidating. There are always lots of work people there. My uncle has one tiny detail. He owns that very company most of our neighbors work for. The same ship, and its captain is definitely not Doug, no matter how much he'd like it. We arrive. I'm in a blue dress. Brad's in a print-free shirt. I convinced him. Chandeliers glitter, servers in white gloves. My uncle leads us over to a couple, a man in a gleaming suit and a woman with a look that said, "I could buy this house with the occupants." "Allow me to introduce you," my uncle says. "This is Doug and his wife, Rachel. Doug is one of our VPs, and this is my niece and her husband, Brad." Silence. The kind where even the crystal decides not to clink. Rachel's eyes went wider than her bug sunglasses. She let out her signature hee-hee, took a step back, and, "Oh, I urgently need the, ladies' room," and vanished down the hall trailing ambition and vanilla. Doug paled, then reddened, and got stuck between the two colors like a traffic light rebooting. "Well, what an interesting coincidence," he coughed, fiddling with his cufflinks. "A small misunderstanding between neighbors. It happens." "Exactly," I said with the sweetest smile I could find. "Our wonderful neighbors. I once told my uncle about them. Remember, Uncle? The story about the Porsche, the garage, and the police?" My uncle slowly raised an eyebrow. On him, that gesture is better than a lecture. Doug launched his corporate spiel. "Of course we value private property. This was boundary testing, so to speak. Community, synergy. Doug," my uncle said calmly, "our company has a code of ethics. It starts long before the office with how we behave in life. My niece's garage isn't a pilot zone." I watched the sweat shine on Doug's bald spot as he tried to smile again and pivot to fantastic third-quarter prospects. But the real message wasn't in the words. It was in how the rest of the guests suddenly became warmer toward us. People from our street came over, introduced themselves, apologized for the HOA misunderstanding, and laughed about how Rachel ran a wine book club where no one read, but everyone learned what everyone else made. Brad stood there with a glass of water, looking like a man finally released from a cursed compile. Rachel returned from the restroom with the same vacant stare you get after reading your own Glassdoor reviews. She nodded politely, murmured something about, "Oh, what lovely weather," and didn't try to talk again. Doug stayed within the lines, and even Pepsi, when they stepped outside, unexpectedly chose a different lawn. Since that dinner, the waters have been glass calm. Rachel avoids us. Her hee now plays only for Instagram, not our ears. Doug's learned to park straight and, for some reason, started saying hello. The HOA president suddenly sent us a sorry for the inconvenience and a basket of cookies. We checked for spy cams. Clean. And I set a reminder, don't forget to close the garage door. Not because I'm scared, because I like closing parentheses. And to finish, a few observations about our former mini monarchs. Rachel never returns her shopping cart to the corral, just a hee and lets the wind deal with it. She talks to couriers like they're her subordinates, then posts support small business. Doug calls everyone champ and kiddo, even people much older than he is. His favorite phrase, "Let's park this offline," after which he disappears just long enough for the problem to resolve without him. They both were sure their convertible was an all-access pass to any garage. Turns out it's the opposite. Moral: every royal family has its protocol, but the Constitution in our cul-de-sac is simple. Respect other people's property. Don't turn yourself into a circus, and no one will drop the door in your face. And if you're desperate to feel your power, at least learn to raise your convertible top before it rains. Hee. Yes, there's always a bigger fish. Hey guys, thank you all for watching the video. I'll see you in the next one.